Today on the journey, I have a good friend of mine that's going to be on as a guest today, and we've spent, I don't know, several weeks over the last couple years together, and just talking dogs and talking life and everything else, and it's really enjoyable to have people around that you can actually talk about things with and relate with. So today we've got my main man, Bryce Matthews, on. How is everything up in Hoosierville?
It is good, man. The cold front kind of broke a little bit, so we're still chilly, but we're not freezing like we were, so all is well.
Yeah, I wish you'd keep that cold front up there. We had it Christmas weekend, and I'm telling you, I'm not okay with these sub-zero temperatures. You can keep them, have them, do whatever y'all do, but we don't need them down here in the South.
Ooh, boy, we had 4 days in a row that were negative in the negatives. I think -7 with the wind chill and -35. So it was brutal.
And you just got back from Grand America too, huh?
I did too. Yep. Just got back from that last weekend. I went down there to South Carolina and spent the weekend down there hunting dogs. The girlfriend and the kids, they showed the dogs and did a little bit of work at the booth. And it was a busy weekend, but it was fun.
Yeah, I seen you got a cast win on Friday night.
Yeah, I took a little 1-year-old male down there for my buddy Shane Smith out of a dog called Mr. Clean's Wild Bill. Mm-hmm. So the dog I took down there, his name's Bear, and he went out there, and that's the first cast he's ever won. So we took him from Indiana to South Carolina and picked up a cast win for him.
How was the temp? What was the weather like down there? I didn't get to go this year.
It was beautiful, man. I mean, I think both days the highs were in the the low to mid 60s. I was working a short sleeve shirt all day, hunting in a long sleeve shirt at night, and it was a good time. So it was good. The kids and the girlfriend had good luck in the show. We placed top 20 in the hunt, so can't complain.
Yeah, I was going to ask if Nikki had any luck at the show. I knew that last year I watched them show, and they done pretty well.
Yeah, she showed a leopard hound for one of her friends, and ended up winning grand champion male that day. So.
Ah, nice. The old leopard dog, huh?
Yep.
Oh, she's going to the dark side. I'm going to have to get on her. I mean, when she gets down to the red bone, she's dipping. And when you go to the leopard, and I'm just picking, guys, but when you go to the leopard dog, man, you're hitting the bottom of the barrel. Like, come on, Nikki. You got to do better. You got to get some of that tricolor in there.
That's right. I tell her all the time, we're a walker kennel. But, she strays away sometimes. You got to reel her back in.
Yeah, no, I'm just picking. So, Bryce, I know we talked when you were down here back in December. You are now the president of the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So, what's going on in your world with that? Like, what's what are you guys working on? What do you got going? What's some progression that you've made? Tell us about that while we got you on here.
Yeah, I'd love to. So the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance has been around for several years. It was an organization that was started by actually Chris Powell and Jerry Mull, basically as an organization for the houndsmen in the state of Indiana to have a place to go to and resources available should they ever need them or run into a situation where their hound is ever harmed or, worse than that, if they're ever killed while out hunting. We're an organization who not only supports the houndsmen of Indiana, but also the houndsmen who visit our state. We're here to support everybody. So the organization, like I said, it's been around for a while, and it kind of died off. There wasn't a lot of activity going on. And myself and a few of my buddies decided that it was an organization that was worth bringing back and worth fighting for. So on July 31st of 2022, a bunch of us met in Greencastle, Indiana, and we kind of talked about the plan going forward with the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance. What was going to happen with it, and what ultimately we decided to do was to just do a little bit of a restructure on it. And on that day, we signed up 28 new members, and we had less than 300 members on our Facebook page. So now that we have 9 new board members on the board, and we are actively trying to grow our group and, show support for the houndsmen in Indiana. We now have over 900 Facebook members. We're closing in on 1,000, and we're just over 130 members total for the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance. So our Facebook numbers are growing great. They're growing a lot more rapidly than our actual membership, but that's something that we're pushing for, and we're out there at every hunt that we can trying to gain new members and spread the word for the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance.
Yeah.
So a couple other things we have in the pipeline here. Coming up on April 29th, we've got the Indiana State Youth Hunt, UKC chartered, and the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance is going to put that on. We're going to be the main sponsor, I guess, for that hunt, and go out there. We have a group of ladies working on a great prize package for those kids, and really just trying to get the youth involved in the sport. You hear it all the time, but it really is the truth. The youth are what the future of the sport is. If we lose the youth, then we lose the sport. So we're really trying to keep them engaged and, teach them the way of the hound and the way of our lifestyle and how we do things. And then on October 6th and 7th, we have the Indiana State UKC hunt coming up. The Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance is also going to charter that and hopefully be a good event for the Indiana State hunt. So that's a couple things we have working on as far as the hunt side of things. I've also been in contact with several conservation officers across the state. We're working with them to try and come up with a few days where we can meet with them, at our local recreation facilities, and they can put on a seminar and a presentation for the kids and anybody that wants to join, and just teach them about hound hunting, especially in the state of Indiana, as well as answer any other questions that they might have for the conservation officers while they're there. So that's really what we're just working with right now is, trying to promote the sport, trying to educate those who might want to learn a little bit more about it. And, really just trying to get our foot out there and get our name known to those people who come to Indiana. Like I said, even if they're from out of the state, we can help you out if you're hunting in our state and you're a member of Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance.
So when you said charter these hunts, explain that to me so we have a better overall understanding what that means for the organization.
Right. So UKC, that's the format that we're going to be using for these hunts. But the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance, as the charter club, we're basically going to be hosting them. We're going to be providing the prize packages. We're going to be providing everything for those hunts. And we're going to be, the main club who's responsible for everything going on those days. We'll take care of everything from top to bottom. And, really we're just going to be there to run the event under UKC's rules. But the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance will be the club taking care of everything that day.
I got you. Well, back to the youth part, that's something in our sport that we try very hard to get the youth involved. And you've hunted with us. You see the amount of kids, our kids that hunt with us, and then they'll bring a friend and they'll go, and some like it and some don't. But yeah, having the kids in the outdoors and having them involved is a huge part of our future and how long we can continue to do the things that we love to do.
I agree. Like you said, I've been with you guys several times, and it just amazes me how many kids are there, even the younger ones. I've seen kids getting packed around on the mom and daddy's back to the tree. They can't even walk, but they're going to the tree, and it's great. So
yeah, it's like a for us, and I know the competition world's a little different, but it's a family event. Everybody around me, everybody around me goes. Whether it's the girls, Brogan doesn't really care for it too much. He'll go sometimes, but the girls really like to be around the dogs. It's about the dogs for them. It's not, anything about anything else. And then, you have, Hot Rod's two boys go. Cooper enjoys it. Carson would rather be fishing, but it's a family event, so they all go. Wesley, same thing. Danielle goes when she's not working, and then, Taylor and Barrett, they go. So, yeah, getting the kids involved, keeping them active and engaged is going to be a very important part of the future for all of us, not just bear hunting, coon hunting, deer hunting, whatever it is. It's going to be a huge part of how we get to move forward. So
right. Yeah, I 100% agree. We do the same thing. Like you said, we just got back from Grand American. That's something we took the kids to. We have quite a few kids, but we load up the van and we go down there for the weekend. It's an event for them, like you said. Even though it is more on the competition side of things, the kids also enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something that we do as a family.
But you got them involved. I mean, they're showing dogs. I mean, they're winning dogs. They're involved. So that makes it more. It captures them a little bit better, and it keeping them involved keeps them interested.
Absolutely,
yep.
Absolutely.
All right, Bryce. So, anything else on? Let me tell you a quick story. You was talking about the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance, and this it has something to do with it, but it doesn't. So, my granddad, my dad's dad, had nicknames for every person in our family. He never ever called you by your name ever. And you know what my nickname was?
I can only imagine.
Hoosier. He called me Hoosier. And I was like, Grandpa, why do you keep calling me that? And he said, because I burned the tires off a set of truck. I burned the tires off a vehicle in no time.
The old Hoosier tires.
So Grandpa always called me Hoosier. Now, you've been with me for 4 years now. Do you think that nickname holds weight?
Absolutely it does. Especially going up the switchbacks of those mountains. I tell you what, sometimes I think I'm going to pull the old grip handle off the side of the old shed.
I think your fingerprints are still in the bar on front of my glove box now. I think it's still your finger. I could probably pull your fingerprints out of that part of my dash.
I guarantee you could, And I also know that another thing that was brought up at Grand American is that you like to hit that old loud pedal whenever there's a puddle in front and somebody's standing next to that puddle.
They made me do it, Bryce. I swear. They made me do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what you say, but okay.
They was holding me hostage. I tell you what happened. Fielder took that old walking stick and put it over on my side and pushed that pedal down. I just got blamed for it.
Yeah, I talked to Fielder about that this weekend, and that's not the story I got from him.
Oh, well, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So you were down the first, was it the first week? Yeah, you were down the first week, and I know we had a little bit of bad weather. Let's just recap your week real quick, and then I want to get into, some of the conversations that you and I had throughout the week about dogs and training and the things that we had talked about. So kind of just recap your week real quick, or take your time, whatever, but recap your week real quick with what happened, and let's talk about that.
Yeah, man, it was just another awesome week in Virginia. You guys make it one of my favorite weeks of the year. I absolutely love coming down and hanging out with you guys and running around for that week. It's just a great experience for me. I love being in the mountains. I love seeing the dogs work. So the first day, we went out. We had pretty good weather. We knew that was on Monday. Mm-hmm. We knew Tuesday and Wednesday were going to be a little damp. So we got out there and we hit it hard Monday. And you and I were just kind of walking down the trail there. And I believe it was Attica, your young pup you've been talking about. Mm-hmm. She threw out a couple booger barks, and you told me, you said, that's not right. She's striking on something that's not a bear. And we kept walking just a little bit, and all of a sudden, man, she let out this bark from the depths of who knows where. It raised the hair on the back of my neck. And I looked at you, and you looked at me, and next thing I know, you're cutting dogs into her. You cut Spook and Kate, and they took off, and by the time they got where she was at, they opened up as well. And from that point, the race was on. So that was awesome to see your young pup go in there and actually get the strike on that bear, and take the credit for the start on that one. Mm-hmm. And you and I both had the Garmins, and we're sitting there watching them, and they were kind of driving the track closer towards Wesley up there. And they end up turning it around and bringing it back down the creek or the river, whatever there you want to call it. And you and I we had a great seat to sit there and listen to that race. Just the way the dogs were moving that bear and walking it, and you could hear the bear bluffing them and shutting them up, and then they'd get back on it. And it was just a really cool experience. And like I said, they worked that for, I don't know, hour and a half maybe. And they ended up getting it bayed in a rock hole. Got down in there, and a couple of the dogs were getting a little too close for comfort. Bear was showing a little bit of distress, I guess you could call it. It didn't like them being there. It didn't like us being there. And, we made the decision that it was a nice bear, and I was able to harvest that bear that day. So it was just great. Opening day, it took all the pressure off. I actually just had some bear chili for lunch today that was made out of that bear. So it was delicious.
Yeah.
Delicious.
And then the second day, I think we did hunt, but we didn't get out much because it was wet.
Correct.
And then Thursday or Wednesday, the same thing. It rained, so I actually went to work, and you went and hung out with some other guys, and then we got back after it Thursday. Yep. We got back after it Thursday.
Yeah, I believe Thursdays whenever we had Jeff with us.
Yep, sure did.
Yep. So, that was an awesome deal. We were just out there busting the brush that day. We kind of made a game plan as far as the group goes, and we started walking through there, and Spook was out by himself, and he hadn't said anything, and all of a sudden he just come treed, which I thought was interesting because I haven't seen a bear dog do that, and that's a conversation that you and I had. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the coon dogs, you'll go out there and they'll just come treat. They ran up on a layup and they worked on something, and they hadn't set a whole lot on the ground, but they come treat. That's not anything that I had seen with the bear dogs. Usually they work the track, then the bear decides to tree, once it has enough pressure. And you kind of looked at me the same. You said, I've seen him do this before, and he had the bear. So we cut the dogs into him, and we went in there, and lo and behold, there it was. He had a little cub sitting up the tree. So I think you said you thought he jumped it up out of the bed right there, and it just went straight up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that was cool for me to see that.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a typical, that's not something that happens very often, but over my years, I've seen it happen a time or two. And, I've talked about it before on the podcast. Kate and Spook are tight mouth anyway. So Kate had actually went up and crossed over the north of the mountain, and Forrest and them they were keeping up with her, and Spook had come down this hollow and just kind of started milling around. He spent a lot of time in there. I mean, I know you and I and Jeff and Fury and it, we'd stood in this one spot for 15, 20 minutes, maybe even longer. It seemed like longer. And then all of a sudden he'd give that one bark out, and the second bark I heard it locate. And the only thing I had with me was the young dogs. So, I put them over there. And it's not a common thing, but it has happened. And, through my experiences, he basically popped that thing right up. He just must have jumped it right out of its bed and went up, and that was the end of that. So that was Thursday. And then Friday, what did we do Friday?
Friday was it was almost a wash. There wasn't much going on. We had hunted all day, didn't have much luck. The fog had set in. We just weren't doing a whole lot. We were riding around, and we were actually sitting at the truck talking about how we were, just going to wrap up the day and wasn't a whole lot going to be going on. And that's when old Greg came on the radio and said that he walked his dogs up on one. Mm-hmm. And boy, did it go from 0 to 100 right now.
Yeah,
that was crazy. We actually had Wesley and Clater on the back of the truck. We had picked them up where they had come through. And when Greg come on the radio and said he had one going, but his dogs, they wouldn't take it for some reason. He wasn't sure what was going on. I grabbed Spook and Wesley. I think I grabbed Spook and Trip, mm-hmm. and Wesley and Clater ran up in there with some of Wesley's dogs. And we ran up in there, had the dogs on the lead, and we got to a point where we thought we were close to where it was at, but we couldn't hear anything going on. And we were just kind of standing there, and out of the corner of my eye, I looked over and I saw this bear, and it was a good bear, shimmying down a tree. And I couldn't say it fast enough. I was like, bear, bear, bear. And at that point, Trip was, I think he was walking in front of us, and he took off. And he went in there and opened, and I cut Spook, and we cut the dogs, and they flew in there and got on that bear. And, from then on, it was just a race to the bottom-ish of the mountain where we were at, which wasn't too bad of a climb or a walk, I should say. But, we're busting through the laurels and crossing creeks, and I was soaked and wet and cold. But at that time, adrenaline's kicked in that you don't even think about it. Yeah. And we got there, and, you guys come in from the bottom of the road, people had packed dogs, and, we got there, and the bear was just hanging on to the side of the tree at that point. It wasn't sitting up in a fork. You could tell it was uneasy. And this is one of those scenarios where things happen right now and you have to make a split-second decision. And that bear was coming down the tree, and old Shaky, Mr. Wesley, he pulled out that revolver, and bam, 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 there it went.
Yeah. He cussed me last time for calling him that, but that's his nickname. It's just, sorry, Wes, it's just the way it is.
Hey, I tell you what, when I listened to that podcast and you said that, I said, you know what? That's going to be the new one for me as well. I'm going to start using it. You know, kind of like Fuzzy and Spanky. I think that's a good one for him.
Oh, yeah. Fuzzy's got so many nicknames we can't even kick them all straight. And then you left, and then Saturday, I'll just wrap it up Saturday real quick. Saturday, we went back into the same area. Fuzzy was actually walking, had Forrest's dogs, and a couple, 3 or 4, I don't remember what they were, but they got one going and brought it pretty close to me. So I run over a ridge and was able to pack Spook, Kate, and Trip. And that was a rodeo. That bear was running dogs off, and he'd back himself up in the ledges and run dogs off, and then he would go. And so we finally was able, Wesley's dad was able to take that bear. And he was a good bear. He was right at 210 pounds, I'd say. Somewhere, it was right there at it, 208, 210, 212. But we had to kill that bear on the ground, and, you know, we just had a handful of dogs on it. I mean, it was running, most of the stuff it was running off. He was pretty nasty. But and I ended up having to take Trip to the vet after that one. Trip can't seem to keep himself out of trouble. He's went from last year wouldn't stay on a bear on the ground to this year, I'm going to stay, and I'm also going to get holes in me every time I do stay. So my dad has to take me to the vet and pay vet bills. So, but anyway, that kind of wrapped up. Yeah, that kind of wrapped up the week. But throughout the week, we had, you know, several conversations, and what kind of intrigued me is, and, you know, I did coon hunt, and I have coon hunted, and I still do it some. The Journey on Houndsman XP has teamed up with One TDC. This dual-action support for oral health and mobility in our dogs. This unique supplement is so effective that it is recommended by top veterinarian experts worldwide to maintain and improve our dog's health in 4 different areas. Their oral health, hips, joints, and muscles, skin, coat, energy, and recovery. Guys, I've been using this product for the last 6 months, and it has been a game changer for me. If you're looking for something to help with the overall health of your dog, go to worksowell.com and give this product a try. It is highly recommended by Houndsman XP here on The Journey. Not a lot. I usually try to get my young dogs started running tree in the off season. When I say off season, that means for, you know, our bear season is only a limited amount of time, and then we can coon hunt pretty much year round on private property. So, you know, I'll take my young dogs out, you know, dozen times a year. It's not, like I said, it's not a lot, but we started having a conversation, and that's kind of where I want to hear your perspective on some of the differences that you're seeing. I mean, you're coon hunting. I mean, you're out running the competitions. You're very active in the coon hunting world. Bryce, what are some of the things that you see that are different, and what are some things that really interest you on the big game side of things in the hound work?
First off, I would say the biggest difference is it comes down to 2 things for me in the bear dogs versus the coon dogs. I think these bear dogs, the amount of heart and grit that they have just absolutely blows my mind. You know, you could take a Walker bear dog and a Walker coon dog, just using them for example, and put them side by side, and you could ask somebody who doesn't know anything about the 2 dogs which is which, and they're not going to be able to tell you. But if you took those 2 dogs out and you took the one coon hunting and you took the next day, you took the next one bear hunting, you can see a difference. There is a fire in those bear dogs' eyes that is unlike anything I've ever seen. You know, and like you said, the dog's really what does it for your girls. That's what does it for me too. I'm there to watch the dogs work and for the camaraderie. If I get to harvest a bear, great. I butcher it up, bring it home, and we eat it. It's part of it. But I'm really there for the dogs, the dog work. And like I said, the heart and the grit that those dogs show on a bear. I think I listened to your podcast last week, and you said it was a 16-hour day for you, for the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And those dogs were with that bear through the thickets, through the bluffs, through everything. And when those bears get nasty, they stay. And even if they're hurt and they have holes in them, most of the time they're there, It's like there's a switch in their head that just tells them to stay, and that's their job and that's their passion. That's what they enjoy doing. Just knowing that their handler is going to come for them, at some point. Until that handler gets there, they've got to stay with that bear. So I think that's the number one thing that just intrigues me, and I think sets those dogs on a different level than the coon dogs. A lot of times our coon dogs, we're doing things quick, fast, and in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
That's the name of the game, speed. Who can tree the most coons in the quickest amount of time? And so, if I can get to my dog in just a few minutes, I'm going to get there in just a few minutes. They don't have to stay treed too long most of the time. It's most of the time the raccoon doesn't stay on the ground. It doesn't put up a fight. It doesn't take the dogs through the terrain that these bear do. I think that is just absolutely incredible. And then some of the differences, right now, the trend in the coonhound world, especially the competition side, seems to be deep and lonely. You don't want your dog on the same tree as another dog. The points just don't add up as well at that point most of the time. So they're training dogs, be split by itself. Whereas the hound dogs, or the bear dogs, I should say, and this is something you and I talked about. I think it's very neat how you could have Kate or Spook opened up 500-600 yards away, and the other dogs in your pack, if they're on the lead, they know that's Kate or Spook. They know that's somebody who they can trust. And when you cut those dogs, they pack to them. They honor that dog and say, okay, we're going to them. We trust them. We're going to help them out. So I just think that's very neat. It's two different mindsets, two different ways of thinking, two different styles of hunting. But each has its own purpose. But those are a couple of things that I think, number one, are just, that's just very intriguing to me, is the heart and grit, and then the two different styles of hunting.
Yeah, and that was a Thursday when when Spook treed that cub. Hot Rod and Garrett had another bear treed just shortly after we did, and it was 0.6 of a mile away. And I reached down and uncut my dogs, and you're going to pack them that far? And I said, yeah, absolutely. Well, it worked out where there were two ridges in between us. So when the dogs dropped down in the hollows, they didn't hear the dogs, and they ended up coming back. The very next week, and I was thinking about you when this happened, Hot Rod got after a bear, and he only had 3 dogs on it, and it would go up and come out. It would go up and come out. So he hollered and said, hey, he said, can y'all get down here and help me out? So I was on the top road, and I was right at 0.6 of a mile from him. But now I was above them so the dogs could hear. I got Spook and Kate out, and as soon as they heard them dogs, I cut them loose. I let them dogs get about 400 yards, and then I cut my young dogs behind them. So I cut 5 dogs to him. And about the time that Spook and Kate got there, they ended up treeing it. And I can't tell you which time it was, the 3rd, 4th, 5th time. I don't know, because it was coming out pretty consistently. And then, of course, my young dogs were behind because you've seen me pack. I pack one at a time. Like I don't, yep. I feed dogs in. Like I don't,
yep.
I don't just cut them loose. That's just me, and that's just the way I do it. But I was thinking about you when I was standing up there. I was like, boy, I wish Bryce was here so he could see this, and I could actually, show him that if they can hear the dogs, they're going, and it don't matter if it's a mile, 2 miles, or 500 yards, they're going. And to add a little bit to that, Spook, and I'm just going to talk about Spook and Cake real quick. Like, they're very independent too. If they're on their on a bear, they don't care what anybody else is doing. But if they're not, they want to be a part of it. They're coming to help. And that goes back to the first day you were talking about when Attica, you know, she had struck 2 or 3 deer down through there, and she has a really high-pitched voice when she's running off game. And this pup's 9, she's 9 months, she just now turned 10 months old. But I've already learned the different pitches and tones in her voices, and I want to talk about that in just a few minutes too, Bryce. So the 2 or 3 times that she'd struck, you know, it was a high-pitched squeal. You know, I let her go for a second, I tone her, she come back. Well, when she opened on that bear, it was a deep bawl. Like what you said, that come from down deep, and I knew immediately that, wait, this is different. And then we took like 2 steps, and the dogs on the lead actually blowed up. If you remember, Kate and Spook were down in the hollow. Greg's dogs had come down the hollow, and they had went down. They were 400 yards, 500 yards from us. They had went and checked Greg's dogs. And then, so I turned my young dogs loose behind Attica.
Did we have Hart and Houdini, I think?
Hart, Houdini, and Trip. Yep.
Yep.
And I turned Hart loose first because she's the most reliable out of the 3. And then I put Trip in. And then I have to turn Houdini loose last because he babbles. And it's not bad, but it's enough it would pull a dog off if I turn loose behind it. That dog's gonna babble. He's gonna babble a little bit, and like I said, it don't last long. It's all that excitement. It's all that, you know, pinned up energy. Like, oh, I want to go, and then he'll and then it shuts up. But I don't like it, and I've been very cautious about how I've tried to correct that. But anyway, that's how I turned them loose in that order. Like I said, Hart's my most reliable out of my 3 young dogs. And when I say 3 young dogs, Trip just turned 2. Hart and Houdini are not 2 years old yet. So I still keep a pretty tight rein on my young dogs. But I turned them loose. They struck, and they went up the mountain. They made a big circle. They come back and crossed the trail in front of us, and then Spook and Kate heard them. And you were like, oh, they're going. I'm like, oh, they'll be there in a second. And then it was kind of like they just merged together, and, you know, the race was on, and, you know, it was definitely a good place for us to be. We were in the right spot at the right times during that actual chase. So
it was awesome to be able to see that, and, you know, to be able to see Spook and Kate come to them. You know, they're like, oh, here we go. Like, this is where our assistance is needed, essentially. You know, and they went in there and did that. And I do remember that day we were standing on that mountain, and you cut at 0.6, and I looked at you, and I'm probably just, my face tells a story 9 times out of 10. And I can just imagine the look on my face, like, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. And you said, they'll go. And I was like, I'll be darned if they didn't try and go. You know, if they could have heard them, they'd have been right there. But it's just a different, like you said, it's a different mindset. It's a different style of hunting that I'm just not used to. I'm so used to having dogs in opposite directions. Whenever you were like, yeah, they'll go at 0.6, I was like, here we go, boys.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, that's the thing. I want my dogs independent enough to do their own thing. Just like, you know, if they get something going, I want them to be there. And I don't want them pulling off of that to go check something else. But if they're not doing anything, I want them to come to the party. Like, hey, I need you over here. You know,
right.
Y'all are my most experienced dogs. I need a little help. And so that's just my way of hunting, my expectations. And I know everybody does something different. But the second thing that you and I had a lengthy conversation about, and again, I want your perspective. I don't, you know, we had dogs up on top of the truck one day, and we were going around the top of the mountain, and Spook give out this long, and y'all have heard me say it, he's got a growl in his bark. And you kind of looked at me and was like, what are you doing? I think I'm going around the mountain. He's like, well, why are we not turning loose? And I'm like, well, it's a code. And, you know, that's when our conversation started. Tell me your perspective on that. What happened, and, you know, what you took away from it.
Yeah. So, I remember that very well. We were, like you said, we were driving around and Spook, he threw out this bark that did have a growl in it. And me, I only get to go down there for 1 week every year. So I don't know your guys' dogs, as well as you do, obviously. I just thought, Spook being a seasoned dog, he's a pretty solid rig dog. I thought he struck on a track, a bear track, and I wasn't sure why we were going around. Like you said when Spook throws that growl, it's a coyote, and you know that. And that to me was it was eye-opening, because that just shows the amount of attention that you pay to each of your dogs on that box. You know when they're striking a bear, when they're being honest, when they're striking a coyote. You're so in tune with that. And it's not just you, talking to Forrest and Wesley and them, they're the same way a lot of times. They know what's going on before they even get themselves in that situation. So I thought that was just super neat. And I don't get that a ton in the coonhound world, because I don't have the dog on the rig right behind my head in the back of the truck. I'm trying to listen to what they're doing, within, I don't know, usually a strike, it's within a couple hundred yards, 200-300 yards, anywhere to half a mile when they're striking. And I'm trying to listen to strictly by sound to what they've got going on and see if they're right. Whereas, on the rig, not only are you listening to how they strike, you're watching body posture on top of the rig. You're looking to see how are they acting, which way are they smelling the scent coming from. And you take all those things and you compile them, you put them together, and then, in a split second, you form an opinion on what you think they're doing. And from what I've seen in my experiences, a lot of the times you're pretty darn close to what they've got going on. So it's just, like I said, it's just neat. It's different to me. Totally different style of hunting, different mindset. But that's a big difference to me is I don't get to listen and differentiate the tones too much on the coonhound side like you can. There have been a couple dogs I've had who have treed possums, and I would know when they're not right. They tree differently. Mm-hmm. But you did all this based off of a rig strike. A lot of times when my coon dogs come treed, they're either long balls or they're consistent chops. If they're doing something other than that, well, something's probably not right. But just hearing a strike, I don't think I can tell you what my dogs are striking on, where you really can. So I found that very interesting.
Yeah, I know we had talked about it, and the hours. I mean, and this goes for all your big game hunters together. I mean, I spend a lot of hours driving around with those dogs on my truck. And I have come to learn that, when I turn them down, when I'm second guessing what's going on, usually there's something going on. Like, this don't seem right. And sometimes it's just the circumstances, the elements, just whatever about the hunt. But when I had the old blue dog Jack, that's when I really, with Spook and Kate especially, that's when I really started learning Spook and his little nuances and quirks and it's he just turned 4, so I feel like I have a pretty good grip on it. But as a hunter, and I think this is some of the trainer part that comes out of me, I'm trying to learn everybody's dog. Like, I want to know, when Wes cuts, Karma loose or Jake or Room, I want to know his dogs too. Same thing with Forrest's and Hot Rods. Like, I'm trying to learn everybody's dog. Where, I think with the coon hunting world, like you said, you've got one dog and you're not running a pack. You're not having to learn, 3, 4, 5, 6 dogs at a time. And I think, you and I talked about, the differences in that.
Right.
And to make me a better hunter, like, I need to know, not only do I want to know the 6 that I'm carrying, I want to know the 6 that Wesley's carrying and the 6 that Forrest is carrying. And, I want to know, like, what's reliable, what am I upping my chances with. When this dog's running, no fear, put them in there. When this dog's running, there's some quirks there, or maybe you need to be a little bit more cautious as turning your young dogs loose. So it's a learning process for us. Like every season, and things will change from training season when the weather's a little bit different, the leaves are on the trees, to December, and I'll just tell one on myself, like, and you coyote hunters, man, I need to get somebody on here so I can learn and pick your brain. Like, I know that the coyotes come in heat towards the end of December, and we don't have we hadn't had any problem. We run maybe a couple in September, August or September, but you never know because you didn't see them, you didn't catch them, and the dogs either fell out, run out, or you caught them crossing the road. But in December, and towards the end, it's usually that week right before Christmas or right at Christmas that we start seeing this. It's like our dogs go off the wall, and they can't stand it. And then we're having, a coyote race or two a week. So, I mean, that's the things that I want to learn. And it's definitely harder when they're on the ground and running. I did notice with Spook, not so much last year, but the year before, that if he was on a coyote, he would get way, 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 way out in front of everybody, and then he'd slow down, everybody catch up, and then he'd get way, way, way out in front of everybody and slow down and catch up. But it took me to the end of season to kind of figure that out.
Right.
And I only had 2 or 3 opportunities to do that. But, yeah, I know that you and I, like I said, we had talked about that, and it's always interesting to hear somebody else's input because there's stuff that I can learn from it, and, stuff that we take for granted because we just do it all the time that other hunters may not be seeing or hearing or doing the same thing. So
right.
It's always, like I said, I always want to listen and learn what other people think, and especially people that are running hounds, because like I said, we may do things completely different, but we're all trying to achieve the same goal, which is to catch game in whatever perspective sport it may be.
Yeah. And, something that along those lines, here, I'm just going to tell a quick little story. I actually took a play out of your book a few weeks ago.
Uh-oh.
And it's just something that I learned from you. I believe it was Friday when I was hunting down there. We were riding around, and it was before, we jumped that bear. There was nothing much going on. And you made the comment that, you said, by golly, I wish we'd run a deer right out in front of us so I could have a training lesson right now.
Mm-hmm.
You are always working on your dogs, and you want to know what they sound like whenever they are on that off game so that you know what's going on with them. And, we didn't have anything else going on. So you're like, perfect opportunity for a training lesson. So when I got back from Virginia, I had a dog. Long story short, I got a call from a guy. He was in a predicament. He had an entry for a hunt down in Alabama, and he didn't have anybody to take the dog. Some things had transpired, and he was in a pinch. So he called me and said, hey, can you be in Alabama this weekend to hunt this dog? I know you have a background with the dog and you know him. Will you go hunting for me? I said, absolutely. So I loaded up the truck and I drove, down to Alabama that weekend, a couple of days later, and we ended up hunting. The dog didn't look bad, but we didn't do any good. But the dog did a couple things that weekend that I hadn't seen him do before. And I couldn't understand it. And, the owner of the dog, he told me, he said, I was talking to him about it. I said, he treated a coon and I recut him. And then all of a sudden he blew out of the world. And when I say he blew out of the world, he was 1.8 miles at one point before I lost communication with him. Mm. And the dog is a hard hunting dog, but that's too hard. That's outrunning his mouth at that point. I don't know how many coons he passed from where I turned him loose to where I lost communication with him. And it didn't make sense to me. He said, I've been having that problem a lot lately. He said, he'll go out there, he'll tree a coon or two, and then he blows through the world. And, I hadn't hunted the dog a ton before that. I think I'd had him for 3 or 4 weeks, but I just hadn't seen the dog do it. So he told me to bring him back to my house and hunt him up for a couple weeks for him, while he got his ducks in a row with what he was going to do further on down the road. And while I was hunting him, one night, I was pleasure hunting him on some state ground up here. And up here in northern Indiana, we've got a lot of patch woods. So we have some big timber, but it's a lot of patch woods with fields. And a lot of times the dogs will hunt that woods. They don't find anything. They cut across the field and they go to the next woods. So that's what had happened. The dog had hunted out the woods. He blew across the field, going to the next woods. And then he went straight through that woods. And I was like, well, that's odd. And the way he was going was close to a road. So I had Nikki with me in the truck, and I had her and our boy Colton with us. And I told her, I said, we're going to hop in the truck. We're going to drive around and try and cut him off. I don't want him getting over in this certain area. And what I found when I got over there was, just by happenstance, was that dog was silent mouth running 3 does. Mm. And he was on their heel. And he run them right across the road right in front of me, and he was nipping at them, trying to pull the fur. But he was completely quiet while he was doing it. So I was like, all right, there's the clue in my head. The next night I took him out, he did the same thing. I noticed he was opening on track, and then he shut up. And when he shut up and he went straight lining, I was like, I think he's on deer. And like you've told me before, you don't like to use any training stimulation or anything unless you know what that dog is doing. So I drove around and I broke out my thermal imager, and I'm looking across the field, and sure enough, here comes the deer out of the woods, and here comes the dog after him. So at that point, I was able to use that as a training situation. I stimulated the dog, let him know that's not what needs to happen. And he went in there, he stopped what he was doing. He went and treated a coon. And on the way home that night, I had another deer running across the road in front of me. I was tired. I had to work early, but I was like, all right, what would Heath do? He'd stop and turn that dog loose. Training situation. So I turned him loose, and he tried to go. We had a training moment, and, he broke off of it. So it was just interesting. Like you said, that moment, it really stuck in my head. You're like, man, there's not much going on. I'd like to use this as a training moment. And I pulled that trick out of your book and used it. And, I can't say if the dog is 100% broke or not. I ended up sending him back to his owner, but I did let him know what I found, why I thought he was doing what he was doing, and how I was correcting it. So hopefully he can continue on with that process.
Yeah, and that's, Wesley and I have those conversations. Well, me and Wesley Force, we all have it. Like, I'm really big on taking any opportunity that I can get and using it as a training session. Like, why not? Like, we're allowed to be in the woods during December, and yes, I want to catch bear and enjoy myself and enjoy the company. But it's also training for me. Like, it's not just bear season. Like, it's training. It's training opportunity. And, like, I think you and Steve were down here last year, and it was pouring down rain. And that deer was up on the bank, and you're like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm going to turn these young dogs loose. Yep. And that's exactly what I take. I feel like we're shortcutting ourselves if we're not using every opportunity to better our hounds and do training sessions with them. I can't legally be out here in May, June, July, April on national forest riding around looking for deer. Now I can do it on the farmland, I can do it right here in my backyard. Yep. But it's a waste of an opportunity for me. And I took several of those opportunities after you left. I don't know if you were with me the day the buck run out. No, I think it was Chelsea. Maybe, I don't know. It was girls. I don't know. A decent buck run out in front of me across a timber cut, and man, I'll put all 5 of mine down. All of them, old dogs, young dogs, everything that was in my truck got turned loose, and I had 2 young dogs that went and started showing me a behavioral change, and they got stimulated. The other dogs paid no attention to it. In fact, two of the dogs jumped right back up on the truck. So, I know that I'm making headway when I'm seeing that behavior. But to me, right, that doesn't mean my dogs are not broke. That doesn't mean that if your dog's out there running deer, that, just because mine won't run it in front of me, doesn't mean that he won't run it away from me. And me and Wesley had this conversation about about context. You know, when you drive down a road, you dump your tailgate, and the dog gets stimulated consistently. The dog associates that with those behaviors. Truck stops, tailgate comes down, I get dumped, I get stemmed, and then the dog don't want to come out of the box. Then if he does come out of the box and you try to put him on, he runs up underneath the truck. The dogs understand context. They understand that.
Right.
You have to be able to change the context in which they are accustomed to perform different training levels, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and it's kind of
they follow patterns.
Yeah, and it's like I told Wesley, it's like sticking your hand in a cookie jar. Okay, because I just bring I'll give you guys a little session here. He said, well, I can take my dogs out and put them on deer and they won't run it. And I'm like, Wesley, you're standing there. They know they've been through this drill 15, 20 times already. They know the outcome. So they're not going to participate. I said, it's just like you sticking your hand in a cookie jar. You go in and you get cookies when you're a kid, and then your mom comes in one evening and all the cookies are gone. What happened to the cookies? I don't know. Well, next day you come in and you stick your hand in a cookie jar, mom smacks your hand. Stay out of the cookie jar. Well, you learn real quick not to stick your hand in the cookie jar when mom's home. Yep. So you learn to do it when mom's not at home or not around. And that's the same context with the dogs. They learn that, all right, they've got a nose, they smell. I don't smell dad within half a mile. I am free to do what I want to do. And you've got to have that. You've got to be able to correct behaviors that you're not standing on top of, because the dog does not want to stick his hand in a cookie jar when dad's standing here. If that makes sense.
It does. And on that line, I've got something I kind of want to pick your brain about if you got a few minutes.
Yes.
Okay. So something that I personally do quite a bit of is I'll hunt a dog that's mine. And I don't own a lot of my own dogs. A lot of times I just handle dogs for other people. They go back to their owners whenever they want them back, and I'll get another one. But the dogs that I do own, like right now I have a puppy. And, her and I are on the same page right now. She's progressing every time that I take her out to the woods. And I'm tossing around the idea of sending her to one of my buddies. This is something that I've done in the past. When I get a dog that, and let me preface this by saying I don't consider myself to be a great trainer. I don't. I like to handle dogs. I like to finish dogs I can go out and win hunts with. That's my preference. But I'm trying to become a better all-around dog man, and I believe being able to train one is part of that. So I'm working on it. I'm really trying hard. But what I've done in the past is if I get somewhere that I'm just at a standstill, like, the dog's just not operating how I think it should operate, or it's doing, like you said, it's not doing something because I'm there. I'm not running that issue because I'm there. I've sent a dog to a buddy and like, hey, will you hunt this dog for a couple of months and see if they do the same thing for a different person? Mm-hmm. Do you ever do that, or have you ever seen any success, or I guess I should say bad results from doing that?
Well, so that's kind of like a two-edged sword. The first thing is you and that person need to be on the same page as far as expectations, training or training techniques, and make sure that there's open communication about the end goal. I'm very funny about letting people handle my dogs because I'm anal and I can't help it. Like I like things done a certain way. I don't veer off of that a whole lot. But right. Yes, and I've had some really nice dogs that I got plumb put out with, and back in my younger days, I was probably a little rougher on them than I should have been, and they just shut down. They were not biddable. They could not take the pressure that I was dealing them out. And I sold, or most of them I give to my friends, and they ended up being super, super nice hounds. And I knew that, but under my supervision and training, we weren't clicking. So, right. Yes, what you're saying has a lot of validity to it. You can send dogs to somebody else just to see if there's if there's something about you, especially if it's you related, behavior wise. So yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, and there's nothing wrong with it. But for me, especially as a trainer, I would make sure that, and I know you are, that hey, this is what I want to see. This is how I'd like to see it done, and I want to know what the result is. So
right, and along those lines, so that is the guy that I send the dogs to. We are on that same page. We do that stuff. It's open communication. He enjoys getting dogs ready and training. I enjoy once they're ready taking them. So it seems to be a decent relationship,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But the same person had a dog that he sent me. He said, "Hey, I'd like you to take this dog to town and get a couple wins on him if you could." I said, "Okay, no problem." And I have seen this dog on Facebook since he's been a young dog. I followed this dog, and he was treeing coons left and right at a very young age, and seemed to be a decent dog. I've talked to several people who have been around and hunting with him. They said, he trees coons. And so my buddy sent me this dog, and I spent a few days just, hanging out with him in the kennel, getting to know him, buddying up with him. Took him out, and that dog wouldn't come out of the box.
For me.
For me.
Okay.
For me.
Mm-hmm.
Would not come out of the box.
Mm-hmm.
And once I got him out of the box, he wouldn't go hunting. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I've talked to several people who say he's a nice hound. Like, I've seen videos, people unsnap him. He flies into the woods like he's late for work. Like, I could not figure this out. And this went on for, a week and a half. I couldn't get the dog to do anything. And all of a sudden, my buddy took me back, and the dog started hunting just normal. Have you seen that with dogs where, they just won't work? Like, maybe in the police canine world, like, they switch handlers for whatever reason, and they operate differently just simply because there's somebody else at the end of the lead.
Yeah, and I see that more in the hounds than I would the police dogs. Environmental stuff. Yes, what you're saying is, yeah, and that dog. If you'd have kept that dog for a month, you would have probably seen a different dog. But that dog had bonded with that person and felt comfortable. It knew their actions and reactions, so the dog was fine. But when you change, you got to look at a lot of things. How many times was the dog passed around? Like, how many places has he been, and how many handlers has he had, and yada yada. I mean, that list goes on and on and on. But yeah, I would say just the sheer change of environment and being unsure. And was he a young dog?
Yeah, he's probably a year and a half, coming up on 2 years old.
Yeah. And that, he's in that kind of that awkward stage of maturity too. Like, that year and a half to 2 years, a lot of stuff goes on within a dog's maturity level. So I'm not surprised, but I would say that if you'd have kept the dog for a month, the dog would have snapped out of that and went on about his business. It was just going to take him a little bit longer to warm up to you, is all. Like, he was comfortable with the other person and so on and so forth. I would be curious to know if he acted like that when he got him and how long it took him to work through that.
I don't have that answer, but I do know that there was another fella who went hunting with him, and my buddy said he went hunting with the dog, and dog's acting fine, and they met up with another guy, and when there was other people around, he said he saw him do the same thing that I was explaining.
Yep,
He just shut down.
Yep, and that's even though it doesn't seem like it's environmental, it is an environmental issue as far as like people being around. We had and I'll give a real quick story and we'll wrap this up. We had a little German short-haired pointer female that's actually working now. She was picked up from the vendor. She was picked by a handler. The handler had her, and he brought her to training, and she literally, if there was one more person in the room, she would pee all over herself and go hide in the corner. And after a couple of weeks of this, let's say 2 weeks of this, and not every day, but let's say 3 or 4 times, I said, take the dog back. this is not something that we want to fool with. Well, during this time, the handler actually ended up leaving the department and moving out of state, so we had to go through a transition and go to another handler. So the whole process had to start over again. It took about 3 months to get this little female comfortable with her environment and being around people and working. Now she's phenomenal. But for me as a trainer, like, I need to get this dog imprinted. I need to get the handler through the handler course. I don't have 3 months to spend sitting here with food in my hand and having this dog adjust to what's going on with its environment. So when they tested that dog, they failed miserably in the testing process. Like I said, the dog worked out. The department decided they're just going to take their time and do whatever, and it ended up working out. But that's exactly what you're saying. I've seen it. Like I said, throughout my career with the police dogs, I've only seen that maybe once, or I know that time, maybe 2 more times, 1 or 2 more times. But, yeah, so environmental things are very, very important. And like I said, the dog, after he matures, you're probably not even going to see that issue with him. It's just going to take him a little bit.
Gotcha.
So, Bryce, to wrap this up, anything else stands out or sticks out or you want to say about, the week down here and, the things that we talked about? I'm sure we're leaving stuff out because we talked a lot, but we kind of hit the high points there.
Yeah, no, as far as that week down there, I just can't emphasize enough how great it is down there. Just watching the camaraderie between everybody that helps each other out down there, and everybody hunts as a group, and it's nobody cares who does what. It's all what can we do as a team. So, that's just great for me. Going back to the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance, I do want to touch on one more thing with that.
Absolutely.
If anybody would like to join the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance, just get a hold of me on Facebook. It's Bryce Matthews, Bryce with a Y, or reach out to us on our Facebook page of the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance. Send us a message with your address, and we will get you a member application sent to you. And when we send you that member application, we also have a little pamphlet we'll put in the mail, which is just a 12-step pamphlet on what to do should your dog be harmed while you're out hunting. And this pamphlet is not just for what to do in the state of Indiana. It is a general 12 steps on what to do if you find yourself in that situation. I think it's good for every houndsman to keep in their glove box of the truck. If something happens to your dog while you're out hunting, you are in a distressed state. You're not thinking clearly. You whip this pamphlet out, it'll walk you right through exactly what you need to do in order to take the proper steps of action there. Like I said, the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance, we're here for any houndsman that even doesn't live in the state of Indiana. If you come hunting in Indiana and you're a member of the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance and there is an issue while in the field, we're here to help you. You do not have to be a resident of Indiana to be a member of the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance. And it's not just for tree dogs either. We take care of our coyote hound guys, bunch of waterfowlers. We take care of everybody that runs hounds or dogs in the state of Indiana. So that's just a little bit about who we are. And, I just want to say thank you for having me on here, and thank you for extending the hospitality each year to come down and hunt with you and the crew. Like I said, I've said it before, but it's my favorite week of the year. I just absolutely look forward to it. And, I love getting to rekindle those friendships every year and make new ones at the same time. So,
yeah, it's a good time. And Bryce, we'll put the, on the show notes, we'll put the link to the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance so people can just click on it and go straight to it.
Perfect.
All right, Bryce, I really appreciate your time. And like I said, I always enjoy it, and hopefully we'll run into each other before December. But if we don't, thank you for helping us teach, train, and learn.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.